Vincent, honey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you again. And it's so good that I got to see you in person recently.
I interviewed you for the summit in August. I got to see you in real life in October, and here we are recording this. And so it feels like such a gift to get to spend time with you. You are my go-to. Anytime I'm ever seeing the microbiome or gut health, you are the person I ask questions to. You're the person I want to interview. You're the books I want to refer. And what we're going to be talking about, not only the state of our microbiome and how critical that is, but one of the biggest assaults to our microbiome and ultimately to our health, which is going to be microplastics and other toxins as well. And I'd love to kick off that conversation. I know that people have been seeing articles in the news and a lot of information. I know Dr. Huberman just had a podcast specifically devoted to microplastics. Even I know we're going to talk a little bit about coffee too as well. I think about coffee lids, and I was actually at a hotel over the weekend on a little writing retreat. And sure enough, and I feel like in every hotel room, there's the Keurig K cups
Yeah, the K cup.
in every single hotel room I go to. And
Mm.
we never touch them. We always go and find a little boutique coffee shop when we're traveling. And so, can you first really quickly define what microplastics are and why should we be concerned about these?
I mean, first of all, microplastics are the rising hidden danger that is a threat to our health, to our metabolism, to our hormones, that is right under our noses and are being consumed without people realizing that they're consuming them because you can't smell them, you can't taste them, and you can't see them when they are in your food. For example, like in a hot beverage, like you go to a coffee shop and you get a coffee to go in one of those, what
Yeah,
looks
coffee
like a
cups.
paper cup,
It's
but the
not.
inside, if it was all paper, it would just like the coffee would just soak right through. So they have to be lined and protected, and they're lined with plastic. But then what do? You put a plastic lid on top. So then you're drinking your hot beverage through the plastic lid. And anytime, especially hot fluids, anything heat is going to release the microplastics within the plastic. And you get these like fine fibers and shards of plastic that are really tiny that get absorbed into your body. And we need to really remember, especially for your audience, for menopausal women, for even premenopausal women, that microplastics are endocrine disrupting chemicals. They mess up your hormones, and especially female hormones. They act like estrogen in the body. So they're going to send your hormones out of whack. And if you're wondering, like, you've done everything possible to balance your hormones and yet things aren't quite right, you have to look right under your nose. What are you doing every day? Are you drinking coffee? Are you getting a coffee to go every day and getting exposed to microplastics? But also, like, food is wrapped
Food
in
is right.
plastic. Or when you order in from a restaurant, you're getting your food delivered in a plastic container that comes hot. So it's become ubiquitous. It's a little bit doom and gloom because it's pervaded our society so much that you really have to think about your behaviors and especially the things that you do every day and decide, like, are there ways that you can change what you do in order to not get exposed to microplastics? And we can talk about what microplastics do to the gut. That's actually a whole new area that no one was looking at. And now it's starting to really come to the forefront. Like, what exactly do these microplastics, aside from scrambling our hormones, they are messing up our gut health.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I think about is dysbiosis. And then also, I'm guessing at least a little bit of leaky gut.
Disruptions in the gut microbiome.
Mhm.
And we know this from a study, like there's not enough human studies yet, but we know this from a study in zebrafish where they looked at the microbiome, the gut microbiome in the zebrafish, and they found that when exposed to microplastics, they tended to have more harmful bacteria growing in their gut. The microplastics also cause loss of the mucus layer of the gut. And if you think about the gut is like this singular cellular tube that is basically like having a thin drywall protecting you from the outside. Would you live in a home that just had one drywall protecting
Mm.
you from the weather and the elements? It's a pretty brittle system. So what the body does is that it secretes this mucus layer on the other side, on the inside of the gut lumen, that acts as kind of a buffer zone, like a stop zone to keep bad bacteria and other things from getting into the body. So the microplastics in this zebrafish study were found to basically, when you break down the mucus layer and you have overgrowth of bad bacteria, then the next thing that you're going to have is a leaky gut. And once you have leaky gut, you've got the pathway to inflammation is open. The floodgates are open, and that leads to weight gain, to insulin resistance, to metabolic issues. And we know from another study that was done in mice that exposure to microplastics cause metabolic derangements, actually cause their cholesterol to go high and cause weight gain.
Yeah.
Now, humans aren't mice, but we have to think, when we look at these animal models, that there's some learning there that can be translated, that if it's happening to them to some degree, it could be happening to us as well.
Well, I know that research is showing that there's microplastics in breast milk and that there is microplastics even within our vascular walls. We know that it's, like you said, it's not only pervasive in everywhere we go, whether you're shopping at Trader Joe's or you're picking up takeout or you're grabbing coffee from even your boutique-y, not a Starbucks, but your really nice coffee shop, they're still using plastic, or even your sodas. The lining of those cans is not just aluminum, it's plastic.
No,
All of
and
it.
any containers.
Yeah, any
So
container.
you have to think about that, and also like water bottles, like they might be in the refrigerator when you buy them, but how many temperature changes did they go through before they got to the store, and did they go through some higher temperatures or heat that releases plastic into the water? So they're ubiquitous.
Yeah,
And
like you
we
said.
have to think about like how they affect us, not just as endocrine disrupting chemicals that scramble our metabolism and can lead to weight gain. So yet another thing to think about in terms of what could be the hidden causes for weight gain or weight loss resistance. But also there was another study done in 2022 where they looked at patients with inflammatory bowel disease, like ulcerative colitis being an example. And they found that patients with inflammatory bowel disease had way higher levels of microplastics in their stool compared to normal people. And again, it's not a cause and effect, but you have to start asking the question, is there some sort of connection even with inflammatory bowel diseases and microplastics, because they are disrupting the gut microbiome, they're disrupting the mucus layer, leading to inflammation, leading to leaky gut. And yet that's even something that we weren't talking about 15 years ago when I was studying functional medicine. Microplastics were not something that was in the picture. We were talking about like phthalates and parabens and perfumes and cosmetic products and things like that, but no one was really talking about microplastics. And I think now, because there's research coming out, we're realizing that this is a really big problem.
I don't know if anyone would disagree that consuming microplastics is a good idea for our overall cellular health or
No, and
our
they
gut microbiome.
accumulate
Yeah, and
they
they
accumulate in the
yeah.
brain
That's what I
also.
was going to say. I mean, I'm particularly about, just the level of neuroinflammation that's going to develop due to that. It just reminds me of how intentional we have to be to not be poisoned every single day. Because that's really it. It's just we're poisoning ourselves at every turn, whether it's microplastics or the endocrine disrupting phthalates or parabens or fragrances or, food coloring and dyes that are made out of petroleum. Like it's absolutely crazy. And it's one of those things I think about. We don't think about how often we are touching food that's been in plastic that we are then consuming on a daily basis. Yeah, I know for
Yeah.
our son, we are so mindful. Everything is glass and everything is stainless steel. His lunchbox, his containers, everything, his water bottles, all of it, because we're trying to limit the amount of exposure. Even if he drinks a sparkling water, it's a Pellegrino, it's a glass Pellegrino. Like I won't let my son drink out of a can of anything.
And you can look at, and if you go to the market, like you will from time to time, you're going to see plastic Pellegrino
For
bottles.
sure. Yeah.
They're not always
It can
glass
be in
bottles.
glass. Yeah.
And like you're saying, like, what are the things that we can do? One of the things we can do is basically choose what you can choose for you. So where you can make a choice, avoid microplastics or avoid exposure to plastics, like choose glass containers, you choose stainless steel, go to the coffee shop with your own
I
portable
know. I always
container.
feel like such a dork bringing my own container. Oh my gosh. We used up all of your coffee. We're going to get to that too. But my husband brought me one of my favorite little, like again, a lofty coffee. I took the lid off immediately. But normally what we'll do, and again, this is because I'm trying not to be the dork who does this. And I get that that shouldn't be the way that we think about all the things I do to reduce the amount of microplastics in my family's life. And here I am concerned about going to my favorite coffee shop and giving them a mug, but I'll bring it and then I'll let them make the coffee and then I immediately pour it into my Yeti. And so we always have the Yetis with us. And really what we do more than anything, this is more of a treat, is I'm just like, we have to just make it. So we have the type of espresso machine has no plastic in it. Like we had a really expensive espresso machine to ensure that we're not literally heating up plastic to make espresso. And then we put it into stainless steel containers. And so even all the things are involved in our coffee making.
Or glass or ceramic. Or look, it doesn't, if you go to a coffee shop, it doesn't mean that you have to be European. Sit at the coffee shop and
drink the ceramic.
Ask for coffee to stay in a beautiful ceramic.
I'm so American in that way. I'm like, to go. I need it to go. I know. We were at.
But everybody gets it. Even if you're like if you go to a US coffee shop or like go to a coffee shop here in New York, most people are getting to-go cups, but they're sitting at the coffee shop.
There.
I like to go to coffee shops where they will actually serve it to you in a ceramic cup when you tell them that you're staying.
Both of the coffee shops we go to, because obviously we live in crunchy Leucadia here, Nectarine Grove being my celiac-free amazing bakery. And they actually, we didn't specify to go and they brought us out the ceramic cups. And I was like, but then I knew, that was the thing to do. And I did have my Yeti with me. So I just dumped it into the Yeti. Yeah. But I think it's a very New York thing, I feel like I have New York energy. I'm just like, what if I need to go somewhere? God forbid, I can't take my coffee with me. But obviously when you go to Europe, they just look at you like you're crazy. If you even remotely consider asking for any type of to-go cup. They're just like, what? I don't even know what that is.
Being healthy is almost like basically turning the clock back in time to before we started doing all these things, when everything was in glass containers or nothing was served in all these plastic containers.
I was going to say the advent of the 1950s, where we had all the Tupperware parties, all the things. I'm like, it's just crazy. I'm not surprised that we started to see a lot of research articles, particularly after the pandemic or through the pandemic, because everything moved to-go containers. Everywhere you couldn't even eat at a restaurant. And I feel like that's where things really ratcheted up. Like everything was to-go. And I think we got into the mindset of to-go. I feel like more people are ordering to-go, more people are Instacarting it or whatever, or Uber Eats more than ever before. And it's just lending to our toxic load. And so I wasn't surprised that we started to see the advent of a lot of these chemicals due to takeout and due to the consumption of plastic contained food that we're seeing that impact.
It's something that people need to be aware of, because I think it's going to be one of these things that 10 years from now, we're going to realize how much damage we've done to ourselves, and not only to ourselves, but also to our food supply, like in the ocean, like the microplastics that are getting into fish. It's so sad how much plastic is floating in the ocean and how it just over time with the sun and everything, it starts getting disintegrated into pieces. So it's no wonder that microplastics are getting into our seafood as well.
Well, I'd love to talk about the actionables. I was listening to another conversation recently, and I love tea, and I realized how many tea bags I had that had microplastic. And I forget how many millions.
That's another one like that. That's one that kind of blows your mind away, because you don't think of plastic in a tea bag.
No, I did not. A couple of years ago.
That one is one, like I understand like Tupperware and even like plastic lined cups, but now tea bags have plastic.
Come on, tea,
And also like some synthetic clothing like polyester can have plastic in it as well.
That was another part of a conversation I was having. So the things that we decided, we're moving to loose leaf tea entirely. Obviously, we made the shift to glass a long time ago. And I get that there's still plastic covers. So I hand wash every cover of our Pyrex and all of my son's stainless steel. I hand wash all of that. I do not want it going through the dishwasher and getting extra heat. Makes
a lot of sense.
Yeah. So those are things that we're doing. My son never drinks out of plastic. I swear to goodness, buy some plastic for my child and see what happens. I will cut your head off. So we're very mindful about all the stainless steel containers and glass containers for our family. And then again, making our own coffee at home is a big part with, with the exception of treats.
That's a
Unless,
big one.
yeah.
As long as you're not making them in K-cups.
Exactly. So, and then I would just a couple more on the list really quickly. I don't touch receipts at all. I never touch. I'm like, no, thank you. Like, don't. And I just feel so bad. Sometimes I do see people that are working the register wear gloves, and I'm like, that is the move. But I don't ever touch receipts. And yeah,
Smart.
I try to avoid putting anything in plastic. We try to avoid takeout. We cook a lot at home in stainless steel. And so these are just the things that we're doing to mitigate. And I get that a lot of these things, they feel or they can sound inconvenient, making your own coffee every day, making your own food, but it's the only way I know that we can control.
Even the way that you make coffee, for
Yeah, so let's get
example,
into
because
that.
that's going to determine whether there's so many factors to think about with coffee, but obviously the way you make it is part of like what could be exposing you to microplastics. Like if you're using like a regular drip coffee maker that's made out of plastic. And then the water is going to go through hot water through plastic tubing
Yeah,
that then
well, you
goes
think
into your
about
coffee.
even the reservoir where you're holding the coffee with, with the little, I know some that you can buy the filter that's, non-processed white filters you can buy, but it's still sitting in plastic. Can we just call that like it's in plastic? The tubing's plastic, everything's plastic. So yeah, you've got that. And how many millions and millions and millions of us have that? We use, if we are going to make coffee, we have a stainless steel, oh my God, I'm having a moment, a French press.
French
That we
press.
use.
Yeah. That's one great way to go. And it allows for a lot of the complexity of the flavors in the coffee beans to come out, especially also the oils. So it gives it a very robust flavor. The other way that I love to tell people to make coffee is as a pour over.
Yes,
Again, using like a non-toxic filter, and you're not using any plastic, you're using a ceramic holder for the filter and just put it on top of your cup.
I really thought I should have been born Italian. I can't not have espresso. And so we made sure when we bought our machine that it was the real deal, that we were mitigating as much plastic as possible. So although we do like when we have brunches with friends, we'll pull out we have two French presses. So we'll do it that way. Or one of us is manning the espresso machine the entire time, making espressos for everybody. So that's been the thing that we've done. But I still buy, so we don't drink dairy in the house, but we buy almond milk and it's in plastic. It's just hard to mitigate all the things. But yeah,
unless you go to the farmer's market and
buy
you're
the
getting
glass,
your almond milk in a glass container that you're paying $10 for
or
more.
20, let's call it. It's not, I wish,
But
not
I
in,
mean,
not in
you can make your
Encinitas.
own at home, but it's like, it's such a rabbit hole of
Yeah, this mama I can only do so much, what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like, I mean, I go pretty far. I'm pretty on the extreme. I don't know if it's extreme by any means, but we were making our own almond milk for a minute, but it is a process for the amount of almond milk we go through anyway. But yeah, I mean, so I want to talk about the K-cups.
You have to constantly be making.
Yeah, you're constantly making veggies and constantly cutting fruit and obviously washing these lids by hand. Like, that's how much you really do. But I do want to talk about the K-cups because I know how pervasive they are in people's homes, how easy it is for people to have these. And it's throw it away is really what we're saying. Throw it away.
It's
coffee.
Well, there's a couple of things that are wrong with the K-cups. And it's funny because when I was coming out with Happy Gut Coffee, friends would ask me, are you going to have a K-cup?
Obviously.
Why would I do that? And I started looking into K-cups, and the majority, I'm not going to say every single one because there are ways to get around them, and there are actually stainless steel reusable pods that you can put in there.
That's called espresso. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do that, just make it
just get the machine.
Just make it that way. But just even the way the hot water is going through and like filling the pod, it's not capturing the flavor in a nice way. But then a lot of these are lined with plastic on the inside. And so when that hot water goes through, then you're getting plastic with your coffee. And if you're drinking a K-cup a day, it's like having eating a credit card per week. Like, do you want to eat a credit card every week from drinking coffee?
That's gross. That is gross. That is a great, analogy of what it would be like.
I think because you can tell people like, oh, there's microplastics, all that in K-cups.
Yeah,
but then if you put it in how about just the visual, like, do you want to eat a credit card every week?
Absolutely not. I think, you put that visual and it changes the conversation. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I do want to shift the convo because I know we're talking a lot about microplastics and it's stop eating them. Basically, everybody is really the message here. And I think
it's
we offer a couple swaps.
Easy in, not easy out. So the best thing that you can do is be as aware as possible. First line of defense is what you've done and you've described that you've done for yourself, for your family, raising a little guy and reducing their exposure to plastics because plastics are ubiquitous. And, as much as you can vote with your dollars, there are other things that people can do and, shop at a farmer's market where things aren't contained in plastic and take a fabric bags and pack your vegetables in there without plastic, bring it home that way. But you can't do that in different parts of the country. You can't do that year round, but at least there are certain strategies that you can follow to reduce your exposure because that's the best line of defense is trying to not get exposed in the first place.
Yeah, I always say avoidance, avoidance, avoidance. Like that is the name of the game. I want to shift the conversation over to coffee. It's the most drank beverage in the world, from what I
2 billion
understand.
cups of
Yeah,
coffee are served every single day, and 150 million Americans drink coffee every single day.
including me and you. I'm guessing you too, right? Yeah, including
Yeah,
us right here on this
yeah. I mean,
call.
I love the smell of coffee. And as a gut health doctor, there are a lot of great benefits to drinking coffee as long as it's a toxin-free, mold-free, healthy coffee, organic that is easy on the gut. So there's a lot more besides the whole conversation about microplastics. There's a bit more that goes into like understanding what is a good coffee for you.
Yeah, well, let's get into it because I think, gosh, I grew up even in my grandfather passed away last year, but he was known, man, he just wanted his Folgers. And I was just like, come on,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
2024, Grandpa. Like, how is it that you're still drinking Folgers coffee? I just could not.
Do you
Like,
remember
can we
the
upgrade
the
you?
the old Folgers commercials? Like they really got the emotional side of what coffee means to us because I think coffee is such in Latino culture as well, like in not just American culture, like coffee represents community. It represents coming together. You sit around the breakfast table and you have conversation with coffee. Or like when I was growing up Cuban, like coffee was being brewed every single morning. That was a given.
Nice.
But coffee was also brewed at around 3, 4 in the afternoon. It was the afternoon pick me up. Or whenever any other Cuban friend came to visit us sometime in the afternoon, the first thing they ask is, would you like some coffee? And of
Wow.
course, they say yes. And
Yes.
then next thing you know, everybody's having their little espresso cups of Cuban coffee. So coffee has this emotional connection to something that, conjures up family, friends, community, wholesomeness. So I think it's not just a beverage, it represents so much more.
It's communal. Absolutely. I grew up in a Mexican household, but yeah, my papa was always brewing coffee, like all the time. People came over. We didn't have the siesta as much as Cubans did, but it was very much the thing. And I remember laying in bed this morning with my son, Kingston, and I wanted, Alex was asleep, and I wanted to just kick him and be like, why don't you? I would love to be smelling coffee right now. I would love for somebody to be doing that right now as I lay down with Kingston. I was like, that would be so great. But
Isn't
yeah,
that like
it's
the
the best.
best thing when you're still in bed? Or like imagine like when you've been at a bed and breakfast where they're brewing the coffee and you wake up to the smell of coffee.
It's the best
Like
thing ever.
that is the best like that will get you out of bed.
Oh yeah. Oh, I go to bed to get up and drink coffee. Like if anyone was wondering how obsessed I am with coffee, I go to bed early just so I can get up early to have coffee. Alex is always like, "Man, you're going to bed so early." I was like, I'm trying to get to coffee in the morning. Like that's what I'm trying to do." That's how serious it is in our household for sure. My son has his own little coffee setup, his little play coffee because he had to have one. He makes us his own little cappuccinos and stuff
Oh, that's
morning.
cute.
It's super cute. He's like, Mom, I'm gonna make you a coffee. I was like, thank you. Mama needs it. And so it's super sweet. I love it. But I know it's absolutely connecting. It's communal. I met with a best friend yesterday over coffee. We're gonna offer coffee tonight after our dinner party. In case people want. Unfortunately, we do not We only have the real deal. We do not have decaf in our house. But yeah, what should we be looking at? As I know, I shared with you that we had a mold remediation situation earlier this year. So we moved over to mold-free coffee a while ago, and have
Super
continued
important.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Anything
know
else we should
that
look out
you
for? Yeah.
and I know you got an opportunity to
Oh
try
yeah,
the
love
Happy
drip
Gut
coffee.
coffee. Some of the things to look out for is, first of all, is your coffee organic? Because if it isn't, there's a high likelihood that it's contaminated with pesticides. Coffee is one of the most pesticide sprayed plants. It's among the top 10 crops that get the most pesticide exposure. So even just before mold, like thinking about the pesticides that are sprayed on the coffee plant, that's a very important part of the equation when you're looking to be healthier. Because if you're getting coffee, even if it's fair trade, if it's not organic, if you don't know that it's pesticide free, then there's very likelihood that there are some hidden toxins in there that you cannot taste or smell or obviously see. Then there's a whole case of mold because coffee, especially low grade beans, and again, it depends on the brand and how much they're cutting corners to make a profit. Because the lower grade beans are going to be the ones that are sitting at the bottom. They're going to be the ones that have the most moisture when they're being harvested, and they're most susceptible to the possibility of getting contaminated with mold. Because imagine coffee's coming from, depending on the climate, like I've been to Peru, Colombia, it's near the equator, it's going to be hot, humid. So it's easier for mold to grow in coffee beans, but especially if they are not processed the right way, and the lower grade beans, sadly, are the ones that tend to be more likely to be contaminated, thus they're cheaper. And so any big corporations, companies that are cutting corners for profits, it's very likely that the coffee could be contaminated with mold or mycotoxins. Anywhere around 50% is on average but sometimes even a higher percentage. So you have to think about that. And then on top of that, like thinking about other things that people face, like cystitis or acid reflux or heartburn. If your coffee is acidic, it's going to aggravate these conditions. So any woman dealing with interstitial cystitis, you want to avoid any foods that are acidic, including coffee that is acidic. And that's something that we did with Happy Gut Coffee by making it a dark roast. The roasting process, by making it a darker roast, actually reduces the acidity of the bean, and it makes it easier on the stomach, more gut friendly, smoother, less bitter, or not even bitter at all. I mean, you tried the coffee and
I loved it. Yeah, I really, really loved it. We went through that real quick. I was like, we're out. And it was so yummy. It was really great. Yeah. I mean, I drink a lot of boutique coffee. Obviously, we buy a lot of organic mold-free coffee too. And I've tried some that they're not it. Like they don't taste good. They taste bitter. They taste, I don't know. And so I'd like to say that we know our way around coffee for sure. And we were really impressed. Alex and I both loved it a lot. And so, I mean, it's one thing for it to be like, again, non-toxic. It's another thing for it to taste good too. It's got to be
yeah,
a yes and. Obviously, the non-toxic piece is very, very important, but
super
I love
important.
the way it tasted.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, because sometimes you'll compromise on taste or flavor because you know that something is good for you. I could mention another brand. I don't care. I'm gonna call them out. Like Athletic Green. A lot of marketing around like getting all your vitamins and all this, but it doesn't taste that great.
No, it does not. No, it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I know I given family and friends different green drinks over, depending. And my mom's like, I just can't drink this. And I'm like, I get it. You shouldn't be trying to shove down something you can't even drink.
If you can get that it's mold-free, toxin-free, pesticide-free, glyphosate, we've tested it. We'd had it third party tested for all these things, including heavy metals. And then on top of that, match it with really great flavor, smooth with hints of cinnamon and chocolate and a
It was
nutty
very smooth.
finish. No bitterness. It's a win-win. And not to mention that we work directly with small farmers in South America. So we're cutting out the middle person and we're helping the small farmer directly.
I love that. I was really fascinated with your kind of journey into coffee. Was it a lot about your family and kind of growing up? Like what was the passion to wanting to create something like this for your community, for other communities?
It's really a combination of things. is the funny thing is that I was like the most anti-Cuban Cuban because I didn't drink coffee for like 7 years.
Dear
And I was
me.
like, oh my God, I'm the least Cuban Cuban. I don't even drink Cuban coffee. I had given up coffee because I'm super sensitive, and actually 50% of people out there have a mutation in the enzyme that processes caffeine and makes them what we call a slow metabolizer. And when you're a slow metabolizer, caffeine metabolites, like they hang around for a while, and you have a 1 cup and then you have a second cup and you're just stacking all that caffeine in you.
Yeah.
Like it
I
makes
am
you
a high
really
metabolizer, if anyone was wondering.
jittery. I was going to guess you're a I could even just have called it that you're a high
I am a
metabolizer.
high metabolizer. Thank
You
goodness.
can have an espresso at 10 p.m. and still go to bed.
Still go to bed. I love it. Again, I think I was supposed to be Italian.
You were supposed, and look, my mom was a fast metabolizer. She could have a 10 p.m. espresso and then just go and plop. She'd be asleep in an hour. And if I did that, I would be awake all night. And anybody who's listening, like, you know who you are. Like, you don't have to have some fancy genetic test. Like, if you have coffee and it makes you jittery, then it's very likely you're a slow metabolizer. But then you worry, like, is all coffee going to make me feel this way? And the truth is, when I started researching the different types of roast out there and went for a dark roast, the dark roast actually, as long as you don't burn the beans and make them bad, like certain corporations out there, I'm not going to mention the name, the dark roast lowers the caffeine content a bit. And so I can have a cup of happy gut coffee and not get jittery and actually feel very even in my energy. Because the other thing that we worry about with drinking coffee is that it drives your adrenals. It, like, if you have any sort of adrenal issues or thyroid adrenal issue and you're using coffee for energy and you get that spike and then the crash. And a lot of that is not just coming from the caffeine, but it's also coming from the toxins in coffee. And a lot of people sometimes they wonder, like, you get a cup of coffee and then you feel good and then you don't feel so good. An hour or two later, your adrenals are crashing. The coffee, like, was an accelerator for your body, but also maybe had mycotoxins in it that have now left your brain feeling kind of foggy.
Yucky.
You actually, depending on the roast, the lighter the roast, the higher the caffeine content of the coffee. So for people who are really sensitive stomach, sensitive to caffeine, a darker roast is actually better than having a lighter roast. And I was actually a bit hesitant and quite shocked. So after 7 years of not drinking coffee, I get this company from the UK reaches out to me. They're called Nolo, and they were coming out with a non-toxic decaf that uses a steam distillation process to get the caffeine out. And they wanted to talk with me about being a spokesperson for them. And I thought, well, I've only been drinking green tea now for 7 years, but if it's a decaf, I'm a slow metabolizer. It's supposed to be for people who suffer from jitteriness. I'll try it. They send me a sample. Long story short, it's not available in the US. They still
I can't
not
even.
getting their act
Go.
together. But when I brewed that first day that I brewed the coffee after 7 years of not making coffee, and I smelled the coffee, and then I tasted the coffee, and I realized, oh my God, I really miss coffee. I miss the aroma of coffee. It just brings me back to my childhood, to like family gatherings, to like, there's just this connection with coffee that and I still love green tea and I still love matcha and all that. And I've been to Japan. I love Japan. I love Japanese culture, but I don't feel that emotional connection to it in the same way that I do with coffee.
I love that. I think I gave up coffee for 3 months once, and that was it. It's not even a thought.
Here's a question. When you
Yeah.
put people on your detox, do you have them give up coffee as part of that?
I do, for the most part, unless again, everyone gets to do what they get to do. The swap is green tea and matcha. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a
Yeah.
great swap. And for years, like I've done cleanses and
Mhm.
detoxes, and the first thing people ask is,
Are you cutting
am I going to have
coffee?
to give up my coffee?
Mhm.
Like, do I have to give up my coffee? And people, they love their coffee. Like, don't give it, don't take it
I
away.
know. Oh, I know. It's the question. It is the question is if I'm gonna have to give up coffee. And I'm like, yes. I said swap it out for matcha and green tea. And I mean, that 1 cup, I mean, make sure it's, again, non-toxic organic
Yeah,
coffee.
like
It's one
now,
cup.
like
Like it's
let's
not,
add, like, if you're
yeah.
gonna drink coffee, like drink a toxin-free coffee
Mhm.
that's mold-free, make it and use methods that don't expose you to microplastics, drink out of a ceramic or glass mug or take it to go in a steel container. There's a lot of other things that maybe are what makes coffee bad that we weren't realizing for years.
I did a lot of detoxes back in the day and I would cut the coffee. And then I decided that because I detox a lot and I really kind of live a deep kind of a autoimmune paleo protocol. But I'm like, if I'm restricting so many other things in my diet, including grains and dairy, cheese, I had a fellow mom who's like, oh, gluten, I get it. But dairy, she's like, that's got to be so hard. I'm like, it's been so long now. It doesn't matter anymore. But I'm like, but I won't give up coffee at this point in the game. And so I always have a lot of empathy for someone. It's like, I just cannot do it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not your mama. I'm not in the house with you. Like, do what you got to do on a detox.
We talked about the things
Yeah.
that you might not know are in your coffee, but there are a lot of things that people add to their coffee that could be bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh
You know,
gosh,
and
creamers, all the things.
creamers, sweeteners, like sugar, like I've seen so many patients get into trouble with their blood sugar levels by
Oh, yeah.
adding those creamers, like those hazelnut or whatever, that are just chock full of sugar.
Yeah, the calafias, like only 5 grams. I'm like, watch like wear a continuous glucose monitor and see what ending your fast, your overnight fast with coffee and a sugar creamer and see what happens to your blood glucose levels. You are going to be on the blood sugar roller coaster. One of the big swaps I tell people, besides the type of coffee that they're drinking, is swapping out sugar or sugar creamers for cinnamon. Like that's the thing. And organic cinnamon, ideally.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, look, cinnamon is a glucose
Manager.
metabolism,
Yeah.
yeah, enhancer, and it slows down the influx of sugar into the bloodstream, and it just tastes great.
It tastes good. I've been doing, I would say I swapped cinnamon for sugar probably 15 years ago. It's beyond second nature at this point. I've been doing it for so long, but even like there's so few creamers out there unless you're making your own creamer from scratch. Again, don't have a lot of additives, preservatives, natural flavors, and most importantly, sugar, especially when we're doing this time of year, all the flavored pumpkin spice,
Oh my gosh, I love one of my favorite seasonal coffees to get is a pumpkin spice latte. That is one of my favorites. And actually, we're putting together a coffee recipe ebook where we have a healthy version of a pumpkin spice latte. But I wanted to say that the reason a lot of people are adding so much sugar to their coffee
is it tastes terrible.
Is to hide the
Yes,
bitterness.
the bitterness, the yuckiness
It's
of their coffee. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I have my own sexy blood sugar friendly pumpkin spice creamer that we'll make from scratch. That's super yummy. That like can stay in the fridge for about a week, give or take. Because when you're making the real deal, it's gonna go bad. So
yeah.
you guys are wondering. But yeah, I can't. Occasionally it happens where I'm at a coffee shop and I'll order, I always say unsweetened, unsweetened matcha, unsweetened coffee, a cappuccino or whatever. I always ask to see what kind of almond milk they're using. Is it the barista blend with 5 grams of sugar or 7 grams of sugar per serving? But
Yeah.
the second I taste sugar or something sweet in my coffee, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I send it back. Like I can't even do it. I'm like, I can't drink this. I'm so sorry. I think, yeah, if you can shift your taste buds to really loving the flavor of a good coffee without all that sugar, like that is the win. Maybe a little bit of cinnamon.
When you're drinking a darker roast, like
It's
the
rich.
Happy Gut coffee, it's not going to have that bitterness that makes you want to douse it with sugar to hide all the bitterness. I mean, that's why Cuban coffee it's crazy how much sugar they put in it because it is so bitter.
Yeah, it's crazy how much sugar goes into Cuban coffee. Like that is the thing. So I'm hoping we're debunking. And for some of us, if ever you put on a continuous glucose monitor after listening to many of my conversations, including this one today, even black coffee can be a blood sugar elevator, a blood sugar spiker due to cortisol, as we talked about earlier. And so without the creamer, without the sugar, that could be even spiking your blood glucose. So that is important to know.
That's a really important piece of the conversation because a lot of people it's funny because you start looking at the research on coffee, and if you have coffee has polyphenols that get processed by the gut microbiome and then stimulate the release of GLP-1, which helps to basically curb your
Yeah,
appetite.
appetite suppressant. Yeah.
But at the same token, if you're a woman and you're drinking coffee to skip a meal, to skip breakfast, but then your body is under stress because you're underfeeding your body, when the better thing would be to have some protein at breakfast time to keep your blood sugar levels steady, that keeps your cortisol levels steady, that prevents that cortisol spike from happening.
I'm so grateful that we're getting into the nuance of the habits and what we do with our coffee and how we drink it, because it does all matter. I know we started this conversation talking about the dangers of microplastics, but given how many people drink coffee, breaking down how to really make it healthy for you, whether it's pairing it with food or it's making sure that you're not adding added sugars to it, that you are drinking a organic, non-toxic coffee like the Happy Gut coffee. We're tending to our health with what we're buying. You're
Mm.
voting for your health with every single fork, with every single drink. I think 22% of calories that the average American adult consumes is from liquid
Mm.
sugar of some kind, whether that's sugar coffee or that's an energy drink or whatever it may be, a Coca-Cola. 22%
Is
of
there
our calories. Holy moly.
what what else do you put in your coffee? If not, obviously not sugar.
No,
I
obviously.
have some things that I put in my
Yeah,
coffee
let's
that
talk about
are
how we dress up
that
our
are
coffees. So it's obviously I need more of your coffee. So we need more of that. That's the first thing. It's usually an organic.
we gotta tell everyone how they can get
Yes, we're gonna yes,
their
actually
hands on Happy Gut
let's just do
coffee.
that right now before I break it down what I put in my coffee. Where do we get it? How do we get it?
Right now, you can get it through basically supporting our Kickstarter campaign, which is part of our launch to get the coffee out there. We have a fundraising goal of $10,000, and part of that is going to support small farmers in South America and just kind of like the chain of command and the micro roaster in the lower Hudson Valley to bring this coffee out to the rest of the world. So support the Kickstarter. You're going to have a link for everyone to
Mhm.
follow to go to the Kickstarter and be able to be part of this exciting launch that you got to kind of taste the pre-launch sample of Happy Gut coffee. And what you invest in this is also helping bring an organic, mold-free, toxin-free coffee that is supporting sustainability, that is supporting small farmers in South America that are really trying to do things the right way and producing a boutique very high quality coffee that not only is good for you, but also, as we were talking, tastes good.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So I will have the links in the show notes. Everyone, just go and check that out. So what goes into my coffee? So it's organic coffee that's mold free. And next is an organic almond milk that's just three ingredients or two ingredients. We're
Mm.
really mindful about no added gums or preservatives or sunflower oil, all that junk that is absolutely not necessary for your whatever milk or nut milk you're drinking. And then
Yeah,
I do creatine. I do 5 grams of creatine, cinnamon,
it's a great
and
one.
sometimes I do collagen, hydrolyzed collagen, and sometimes I don't. It just depends on if I'm in the mood. Sometimes I just don't want to mess with it. But the creatine always goes in there specifically for my brain and for building muscle. But mostly
Mhm.
I'm doing it for my brain health, the
Love
five
that.
grams. So that's what goes into mine. How about you?
Mine is okay, so collagen is in there. And actually, I become a fan of the product by Designs for Health, Whole Beauty Collagen.
Nice.
So I
Okay.
put that in there. It's got a silica derivative that's really good for the hair and skin. I like that. I figured like this is a good way to the coffee is the vehicle for getting these other nutrients. And then I also add SBIs,
Oh
which are
yeah.
serum-derived bovine immunoglobulins, which are kind of like taking colostrum in a sense. So it's really good for the gut. It helps bind any toxins in the gut. It's good for the gut lining and just overall for protection against any bindable toxins that are in the gut can be bound by these SBIs. So I tend to, when I'm at home, sometimes I don't bring it with me when I travel, but when I am at home, I'm usually using a combination of these two things and maybe like a minimal ingredient almond milk as well, just like you.
I love that. I'm so glad we shared that with everybody, what you can do to adjust your coffee. I have friends of mine who literally I won't name who it is, several actually, who put protein powder in their coffee. And I'm just like, I cannot. And I get it. Like women are trying to hit their protein numbers and get in where you fit in, but no, absolutely
You can get it
no.
through collagen, which
Well,
is
it's not the same as like, protein powder. Collagen
no.
has its own, it
It's
serves its own purpose, absolutely, especially for our joints. Actual protein powder, no, no, no. So I try to keep it that's as much. That's why I said I sometimes I don't even want to shift the taste with collagen. It depends on the mood.
I'll add coconut oil sometimes or MCT oil if I want, if I'm like fasting. So like on the weekends, I tend to skip breakfast and I'll just have the coffee and then I'll add some fat into it. I don't do the butter thing like some people do. Yeah, it does not sit well on an empty
No,
stomach.
I have found the butter or the MCT. Alex will do the MCT. I think men do better with it than women,
Mhm.
kind of what I've heard from women that I've talked to over the years. And I myself it's not been my favorite. But I mean, to each their own. We're all an N of one experiment, right? Figure out what works
Yeah, you
best
have to
for
listen
you.
to your
Yeah.
body, and it's true, especially like perimenopausal, menopausal women
I
to the
agree. Like
diet.
I'm like, well, you want me to what? Add a bunch of extra fat to my coffee?
Yeah, even
Like,
though fat doesn't make us fat,
no,
but
no.
certain types of fat in too high quantities actually become the enemy of weight loss
Yeah.
for women.
The how I think about it, I love avocado, so that monounsaturated fat, lovely, and
Yeah.
obviously we put
And
olive
olive
oil, yeah,
oil.
on our salads. But I try really not to add fat into my diet. There's so much about the adding, I have seeds or I'll put flaxseed in my smoothie, that kind of thing. Like I'm not just pouring oil in my coffee, like it's got to really be a micronutrient rich type of food that I'm adding
Yeah.
into, that's fiber rich, that's also antioxidant rich. We eat a lot of salmon in our household. So that's how I think about getting fats into my diet, is that it's built into a lot of the foods that are feeding my gut microbiome.
Yeah, and there is some question with saturated fats like in coconut oil that they might increase intestinal permeability. It's
Yeah.
not, I can't say that we have evidence from studies, but there's some question about
Yeah.
it.
You're a fast metabolizer. Okay. So maybe not a breakdown of caffeine, but you're definitely a fast metabolizer.
I
And so
am a
you could
fast
absolutely,
metabolizer, as you can see,
you
like
got the
I'm
A
pretty,
pack and everything. And so, for someone like yourself, you absolutely have the wiggle room. As much as I really work on my metabolic health, and like I said, labs look great and everything looks great, but ultimately I'm a slower metabolizer. And so I'm really, to me, as an N of one experiment, adding oil to my coffee isn't it. Or,
yeah.
and so I think, yeah, knowing your body, kind of knowing how you respond. Alex, I think, has played with it a little bit. I don't think for the most part has seen, a major issue with putting ghee or MTC oil into his coffee, but he's a different type of metabolizer than I am at
Mhm.
45 years old, in perimenopause.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's a really good point, and the person who came out with that recipe of butter and MCT oil and coffee was a man, not a
yes,
woman.
I know, I know, I
So
know.
we need to pay attention to those things because there are differences in what works for men and what works for women when it comes to diet and the things that we consume.
Yeah, and particularly for women, whether it's throughout your menstrual cycle, like maybe you could get away with a little bit of that in the follicular phase, but then you get into perimenopause and we're more insulin resistant. We see a dysfunctional lipidemia happening. We see more fat gain. On average, most women in perimenopause will experience 5 pounds of fat gain, and 20% of us 10 pounds or more. Again, you just got to really, yeah, I'm not a proponent of the keto diet. I'm a big proponent of really eating, again, metabolically healthy foods that are really nourishing the microbiome. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's been my experience working with women, is that adding fat to coffee isn't necessarily the move, more focusing on fiber rich foods, healthy fats that
Mm.
come from nature, and making sure that we're prioritizing our protein. Like that's what I feel like
Yeah,
moves
but
the needle for us.
they could add creatine to
Yeah.
coffee
Yes.
or add collagen powder. Those would be good
Yes.
additions that would have health benefits for women.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love this conversation. Vincent, honey, thank you so much for coming on and getting for us to just kind of, move through so many different ways to support our bodies and our microbiome. I'll have the link for Happy Gut Coffee inside of the link. And I just want to say congratulations on this beautiful new endeavor. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything and love our conversations. And I think people are going to get a lot of value out of this.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I agree. And I at least just be a fly on the wall. I feel like we had such a fun conversation today. All right, honey. See you later.
See you later.